You won't believe how my very first week in the new cabin turned into something I could never have imagined. I had bought this place to escape the chaos of the city, to enjoy the peace of nature, the wide open fields, the sound of birds instead of horns, and the freedom of living on land my family had owned for generations. But peace didn't last long. On the very first morning I wanted to get some work done, I discovered something that nearly made my blood boil. I had woken up early, the kind of morning where the air feels crisp and full of promise. My plan was simple: haul some lumber and supplies with my tractor to finish setting up my shed. I brewed a pot of strong coffee, walked out onto my porch with a sense of pride, and looked at the land stretching out before me. That was when I saw it. A massive black SUV parked diagonally across my driveway, completely blocking me from getting in or out. At first, I froze. My brain tried to make sense of it. Maybe someone had broken down. Maybe there was some kind of emergency and a neighbor just had to stop there temporarily. But no, as I squinted I realized this wasn't some random situation. Standing right beside the SUV with arms folded across her chest was a woman I had never met before. She had oversized sunglasses on even though the sun had barely risen, and she stood like a security guard daring me to complain. I walked closer, my boots crunching on the gravel, and called out, "Excuse me, you're blocking my driveway. Can you please move your car?" She didn't move an inch. In fact, she tilted her head and smirked like she had just won a small victory. "This road belongs to the HOA," she said, her voice sharp and cold. "We don't allow tractors around here. That farm equipment of yours is an eyesore, and until you agree to follow the HOA rules, you're not going anywhere." For a moment I thought she was joking. I even let out a small laugh before realizing she was dead serious. I took a deep breath and said calmly, "Ma'am, I'm not part of your HOA. This is private property. This land has been in my family for years. You don't have any authority here. Please move your vehicle before I call the sheriff." Her smirk widened. "Go ahead," she said, tapping her sunglasses. "The sheriff's on our side. You'll never last here if you think you can just ignore the HOA." That one sentence changed everything. I had just moved in, I hadn't even finished unpacking, and already this woman was standing here acting like a queen who owned the road. She didn't care that she was trespassing. She didn't care that she was blocking my only way out. She wanted control, and she was testing me to see if I'd bend. I wasn't about to. Still, I kept my tone measured. "I'll ask one more time, politely. Move your SUV." She laughed, an actual mocking laugh. "Or what? You'll call the county? You'll write a letter? We've run out people like you before, and we'll do it again. Tractors, barns, chickens, whatever country mess you've dragged in here, we don't want it." My patience snapped, but instead of yelling, I pulled out my phone. I started recording. For the record, I said into the camera, keeping it steady on her face and her SUV, "This vehicle is blocking my driveway on my private land. I've asked the owner to move it, and she has refused." She waved her hands and said, "You can film all you want. It won't change a thing." She had no idea what she had just given me, proof. In my mind, I was already planning my next steps, because if she thought she could intimidate me with an SUV and a smug attitude, she was about to find out she picked the wrong neighbor. The quiet morning air felt heavier now. The peaceful cabin life I had dreamed about was suddenly colliding with the harsh reality of HOA drama that wasn't even
supposed to affect me. My hands itched for action, but I knew one thing: I wasn't going to let Karen win. She had made her first move by blocking my driveway. The next move would be mine, and I was going to make sure she remembered it for a very long time. I stood there, staring at that SUV blocking my driveway, and the longer I looked at it the more I realized Karen had no intention of moving it. She had come here with a purpose, and that purpose was to break me down before I could even settle in. I knew exactly what kind of neighbor she was, the type who fed on intimidation, who thought rules applied to everyone except her, and who believed if she shouted loud enough people would bow down. But she didn't know me, and she didn't know what I was capable of. I decided to give her one last chance, not because I thought she deserved it, but because I wanted everything documented. I lifted my phone again and said clearly, "This is your final warning. Please move your SUV or I will be forced to remove it myself." I half expected her to smirk again and step aside, but instead she laughed out loud like I had told the funniest joke she'd heard all week. "Remove it yourself," she mocked. "With what? That rusty tractor of yours. You wouldn't dare touch my car. You'd be in court so fast your head would spin. That was it. That was the green light I needed. She thought I wouldn't dare. She thought I would stand there helpless, waiting for her to take pity on me. She thought wrong. I slid my phone into my pocket, turned without another word, and headed for the barn where my old but reliable tractor was waiting. The gravel crunched under my boots as I walked, and with every step, my mind grew clearer. I wasn't about to fight her with words anymore. Words meant nothing to a woman like her. What mattered was action. As soon as I climbed up onto the tractor and turned the key, the engine roared to life, loud and powerful, shaking the still morning air. Karen's head snapped around. Her confident smirk disappeared for the first time, replaced with a flash of panic. "You wouldn't dare," she shrieked, rushing toward me. But I wasn't listening. I pushed the throttle gently, and the tractor began to roll forward. Every inch closer made her voice rise higher. "Stop, stop, you can't do this. That's a $50,000 vehicle," she screamed, pounding her fist against the metal side of the tractor as I passed her. But I had already lowered the front loader and was aiming it directly at the underframe of her SUV. The machine groaned as the forks slid under the car, scraping just enough to make her gasp. "Are you insane?" she yelled, her voice cracking with fury and fear. "You'll regret this. I'll sue you for everything you have." But I wasn't breaking her car. I wasn't smashing it. I was simply moving an obstruction from my private property. The forks fit snugly under the chassis, and I pulled the lever. Slowly, almost gracefully, the heavy SUV lifted off the ground. The back tires dangled first, then the front, and within seconds her massive vehicle looked like a toy dangling in the grip of my tractor. Karen let out a scream so high-pitched I thought for a second she might faint. She ran circles around me, yelling, "Put it down. Put it down. You're destroying it." But I stayed steady, calm, focused. I maneuvered the tractor forward, carrying the SUV like it weighed nothing. Every inch I drove, her panic grew louder. "You can't do this. It's illegal. It's criminal," she shouted, fumbling for her phone. I could see her recording me now, but she didn't realize that my recording had already captured her threats and her refusal to move. I wasn't the one in trouble. She was. I carried the SUV toward the edge of the road where the shallow ditch waited like a perfect resting place. Karen sprinted ahead, planting herself in front of the ditch, arms flailing. "You better not," she screamed, trying to block my way. I pressed the brakes, not because she scared me, but because I wasn't about to run her over. I leaned out from the cab and said in a voice calm enough to cut through her hysteria, "Move, or I'll wait here until the sheriff comes and sees exactly what you've done." For a second, her eyes flickered with uncertainty. She looked at the tractor, then at her dangling SUV, then at me. But her pride wouldn't let her back down. She stomped her foot like a child throwing a tantrum. "You'll be in jail for this. I promise you," she spat. I smiled and pulled the lever. The forks tilted, and with one clean motion, the SUV rolled forward and dropped into the ditch with a heavy thud. Mud splashed, the tires sank halfway into the soft earth, and the car tilted at a helpless angle. Karen let out a blood-curdling scream, her phone shaking in her hand. "You ruined it. You destroyed my car," she wailed, stomping through the mud as if she could pull the SUV out with her bare hands. I parked the tractor, shut off the engine, and climbed down, brushing dirt off my jeans as I walked past her. "I didn't ruin it," I said, holding my phone up again. "I moved an obstruction off my driveway. I have the entire thing on video." She glared at me with so much hatred it was almost comical. "This isn't over," she hissed. "I'm calling the sheriff right now. You're finished here. Do you hear me? Finished." She was already dialing, pacing up and down the road, screaming into her phone about how her car had been violently attacked by her lunatic neighbor. I didn't even bother arguing. Instead, I leaned against the tractor tire, checked my video again to make sure everything was crystal clear, and sipped the last of my now cold coffee. In my head, I wasn't worried about the sheriff. I knew exactly what would happen when he saw the footage. What I was more interested in was the look on Karen's face when she realized the law wasn't on her side, and that her HOA rules had no power on my land. Because if she thought I was a man she could push around, today was the day she learned I wasn't the kind of neighbor who bowed down. Today was the day she found out I was the kind who fought back, with a tractor if necessary. The sheriff's cruiser arrived faster than I expected, lights off but tires crunching the gravel like a judge walking into a courtroom. Word travels in small towns, and by the time he pulled up, the whole street had gathered, neighbors peeking from porches, a couple of kids on bikes, and of course Karen, still drenched in mud and fury, pacing like a caged animal. She saw the car and launched herself toward it, shrieking something about, "He assaulted my property," and, "Arrest him now," but the sheriff was calm, middle-aged, the type who's seen every kind of petty war and real emergency. He stepped out, hands on his belt, and asked one simple thing, "Sir, can you tell me what happened?" I swallowed the urge to repeat every angry word I'd had for Karen and kept my voice steady. "Officer," she parked across my driveway. I asked her to move multiple times. She refused and started insulting me. I tried to resolve it peacefully, recorded the whole thing, and when she still wouldn't move, I used my tractor to remove the obstruction from my private driveway. I didn't damage the car. I moved it to the ditch so I could leave. The sheriff nodded and glanced toward Karen, who was now breathless and on the phone, her voice turning to high-pitched theater as she narrated her version. He lifted my car with his tractor and dumped it in a ditch. "He's violent. He needs to be stopped," she cried. The sheriff raised a hand and said, "Mom, calm down. Let's hear both sides." He asked Karen to step back and tell her side slowly, and for once she wasn't prepared to be so measured. Her story slid between dramatic phrases: "He attacked me, he could have killed me, this isn't right," and the sheriff listened the way a doctor listens to an overhyped symptom, politely, but skeptical. Then he turned to me and asked the most important question: "Do you have any record of her blocking your driveway?" I handed him my phone without hesitation and said, "Yes, the entire incident is recorded." He took the phone, watched the footage standing right there where everyone could see. The clip showed the SUV parked deliberately, Karen folding her arms, refusing to move, my polite warnings, her mocking laughter, the tractor starting, the forks sliding under the chassis, and finally the SUV being lifted and placed in the ditch. There was no reckless acceleration, no smashing, just a careful, controlled relocation. The sheriff's face didn't harden in the way an angry cop's might. It softened into the expression of someone who had seen the truth happen on a grainy phone screen before people started shouting about it. He looked up at Karen and asked, "Mom, did you have permission to park in his driveway?" Karen sputtered, searching for the right words. "Well, it's HOA land, it belongs." The sheriff cut her off with a short, factual look. "Have you checked county records?" She hesitated. "No, but," he raised a hand. "Do you have any paperwork that grants you the right to block someone's private drive?" Silence. The neighbors shifted, a ripple of whispers spreading like wind through wheat. The sheriff asked where I lived, checked the property lines on his tablet. These small town cops carry everything now, and in under 2 minutes he said something that made Karen's face go pale. "This is private property. According to county records, this driveway belongs to him. You're on his property without permission. You can't just block someone's only exit." Her eyes tried to find outrage, but the facts were faster than her performance. She tried a different tack. "He used heavy machinery. He could have hurt me. He endangered the neighborhood." The sheriff's answer was patient but firm. "From what I saw on the video, he moved a vehicle that was illegally obstructing his private property. He did not use it to assault you. If you were standing in front of the vehicle and placed yourself in harm's way, that's on you." He turned and addressed me directly. "Do you want to press charges or file a formal complaint?" I shook my head. The whole point had been to clear my way and to put an end to her harassment, not to start a legal war. No, officer, I just want access to my property and for her not to block me again. He nodded, and then, because small towns like this are equal parts law and neighborly pressure, he made another suggestion. Ma'am, he said to Karen, you need to move your vehicle and have it towed out of that ditch at your expense. Also, consider staying away from his property. If you return and deliberately obstruct his driveway again, you'll be cited for trespassing and obstruction. She opened her mouth to argue, then lowered it as if some invisible hand had pressed down on her script. Pride can be loud, but the law is louder in most cases, and on this particular morning the law had chosen my side. The tow truck arrived an hour later, the operator shaking his head as he winched Karen's SUV out of the mud, its undercarriage fouled and its pride dented but not beyond repair. The neighbors watched, some clapping quietly, some whispering congratulations. Karen stood by the roadside, phone in hand, calling someone, probably the HOA president, her voice tinny and small. The sheriff stayed for a while, took a statement from both of us, and eventually left with a few notes and a polite reminder that civil disputes often resolve themselves faster when they don't involve blocking private property. After he left, the atmosphere around my place changed. People came over, some to apologize for Karen's behavior. She's always been a handful, one neighbor muttered, others to ask if I was okay or to thank me for standing up. A few laughed and said they'd seen it coming. Others admitted privately that Karen had been causing trouble for months, with a pattern of aggressive neighborhood stewardship that bordered on harassment. Later that afternoon, while I was cleaning mud off the tractor and checking my phone for messages, a neighbor I barely knew walked up and handed me an envelope. Inside was a printed copy of county records showing the property line, along with a small note, "Welcome to the real neighborhood. We've been waiting for someone to stand up to her." I smiled and felt something I hadn't in weeks, a sense of belonging. The world is a strange place where a tractor and a steady hand can mean more than lawyers and threats. Karen eventually filed a complaint with the HOA, but the HOA's power ended where county law began, and county law had been very clear: she had no authority to block private property. The lawsuit she threatened never materialized. She had to pay for the tow and endure the humiliation of explaining to friends why she had been left in the mud. As for me, I strengthened the gate, posted a clear, "Private Drive" sign, and kept the recording as insurance. More than anything, I kept the lesson: sometimes peace requires a firm refusal to be pushed around, and sometimes justice is simply the quiet confirmation of common sense and the law. The sun set that evening with a soft orange glow over the fields, and for the first time since I moved in, I felt like I had a home, not just a house, and a community that, in its messy, imperfect way, had my back.